Hello, everyone, and welcome to SCORE Fairfield County's live webinar on how to accomplish a whole lot more in less time. I'm Tim Ryan, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County, and I'll be your host. Our presenter today is Don Wetmore. More on Don in just a minute. First, some brief information on SCORE. Nationwide, there's over 320 offices, including 11,000 volunteers in total. We're part of the SBA, the Small Business Administration. SCORE Fairfield County has over 130 volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. We offer 3 primary value-added services. 1, free one-on-one counseling, face-to-face, telephone, email, and these days, video via Zoom. 2, we do educational workshops and webinars, over 150 per year like this one. And 3, we have extensive resources on our website, including a network of subject matter experts at your disposal, as well as some templates and tools for you to use to build your business plan. SCORE puts on scores of webinars each month. Look for future events on our website, our webinar, and our webinar calendar on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org. Information on today's event. If you have a question, please use the chat window at any time during the presentation. It is located in the lower part of your screen. Our webinar will end at 1 p.m. to respect your time. The session is being recorded and will be available at fairfieldcounty.score within the next couple of days. Now, our speaker. Don Wetmore is a certified executive coach and the author of 8 books, including Beat the Clock, Organize Your Life, The Productivity Handbook. He has made over 2,000 domestic and international speaking presentations to more than 100,000 people, sharing his unique personal productivity principles and tools that he has created to get more done in less time. Welcome, Don. It's all yours, and please unmute yourself.
Well, thank you, Tim, and thank you all for joining me on this hour and how to accomplish a whole lot more in less time. Boy, I wish I could give you more time to accomplish a whole lot more, but we can't. We all have the same amount of time, 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, and it's all in how we spend that time that determines how much we can accomplish. Hold on here. We'll do it that way, I guess. A little bit about my background. I really had 3 full-time careers as an attorney, as an entrepreneur, and also as a college professor. And I was on the faculty at Mercy College in Dobbs Ferry, New York, and it was actually through Mercy College that got me into doing this kind of work. It happened some years ago when my boss asked me to put together a program on time management, and said, "You're doing a lot of this stuff, maybe you know something about it." And I was kind of flattered to be asked. And that led into this career where I do all this productivity training and coaching. When we take a look at people and how they're using their time, I break it down to 3 categories. There are people out there who are busy, and these are folks who are taking care of all the have-tos and staying out of trouble, not going to jail, pass go and collect $200. And then there are people who are too busy, and these are the people that oftentimes seem to be the most productive, but really they're probably the least productive. They're the ones that are trying to get it all done, which is really something that can't be done because we all have too much to do. And they're stretched thin, they're running late, they have to make lots of apologies for slipping, things slipping through the cracks and missing deadlines and the like, always tired, out of work-life balance and squandering and instead of spending time. But the ones that are real busy and the ones that are getting a whole lot more done are the ones who are taking care of not only the things that they have to do, but also the things that they want to do. And we'll talk about that here today. I'm going to focus in on the productivity deficit because I can't give you any more time, but there's a lot of time that we're spending that is not productive time. And if we can shift over some of that unproductive time to the productive column, that gives us the equivalent of getting more time. It's called working smarter rather than working harder, you know? And so as a matter of fact, when we've done surveys on this, and when people rate how they spend their time, and we use a simple A, B, C, D rating system. A means crucial. I'm really very, very productive. B time means important, but not crucial. And then there's C time, which has little value, and D time, which has no value. And you'd think that the productivity, the bulk of that time should be spent on A's and B's, the things that are crucial and important. But we've done these surveys and found that on average, most people only spend about 20% of their time on the A's and B's, the things that really make a difference. And 80% of their time is on C's and D's. Meetings they don't belong in, suffering from interruptions, a lack of delegation, poor planning. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So let's think in terms of how we can shift some of that C and D time over to the A and B column and get the equivalent of more time and more productivity. I break it all down in what I've labeled as the 7 vital areas of life. Life is more than just making a living. Life is more than just doing a job. And let me just share with you a word or two about the importance of each one of these, because it gives us kind of the big picture of where our productivity is done. In our health dimension, this year in this country, I'm told there's going to be about 2.5 million deaths. And the health dimension is the one that we value the least until when? Yeah, until we don't have it anymore. You know, I imagine that everybody on this call would be willing to spend a few extra dollars on the last day of life to buy a few extra years of quality living, but nobody's going to be there to make the sale. And you take a look at the 5 leading causes of adult deaths in our culture. Well, not 100% preventable; they're 90% preventable. The number 1 cause of this is heart disease, followed by some of these other causes. And it just seems to me that productivity and managing our time has to involve taking care of our health and fitness now. I often tell my audiences, either you take time for health and fitness today, or you're going to have to take time for sickness and illness tomorrow. And if nothing else about time management, if we can do some things that'll increase the likelihood of having more time to manage, we're going to live longer. That's a pretty good choice to make. Number 2 is, oh yeah, by the way, we're also a sleep deprived culture. You know, if you lose just 1 hour of sleep per night, and you know you're busy doing all kinds of different stuff and everything, and you think that you're going to make it up on the weekend, the pulmonologists and the sleep experts that I speak with tell that just isn't going to be the case. That really doesn't happen. Okay, you're not going to make it up, and you effectively lose 1 whole night a week if you don't get a sufficient quantity of sleep. The average person gets about 7.5 hours worth of sleep. You may need more or less, but I think it's very, very important to make sure that you get a sufficient quantity of sleep. Otherwise, you're going to create a deficit in your productivity the next day. I like this little cartoon. You know, what fits your busy schedule better, exercising 1 day a week or being dead 24 hours a day? We don't want to rush to an early grave. The second dimension in our 7 vital areas is our family dimension. And I appreciate good quality time as much as anybody else. But you know, in this year in this country, there's going to be about 2 million marriages, which is really nice. I mean, you know, and if there's 2 million marriages, there's going to be 1 million divorces. And the divorce rate in this country comes out to about 50%. And we take a look at what causes divorce, and we hear all kinds of reasons. Well, it's money issues, it's infidelity, or perhaps some other issues. But really the bottom line is, and as an attorney, I've been involved in many, many divorces, it's caused by a lack of communication. 95% of all relationships fall apart because of a lack of communication. And, you know, we were communicating when we get together, but, you know, time goes by and The American Management Association tells us that the average working professional spends only about 2 minutes a day in meaningful communication with their spouse or significant other. And I don't know about you, but I can't get my story out in 2 minutes a day, let alone hear what my wife did in her time in 2 minutes a day. And the same study also tells us that the average working professional, that's you and I, we spend as little as 30 seconds a day in meaningful communication with our children. It's just a little bit more than, hey, how was school? Yeah, okay. Do you have homework? Nice chat, son. Number 3 is our financial dimension, and that's where most people think about their productivity in the financial area, and that's certainly an important piece of it, okay? And we actually wind up spending, the average person spends about half of their waking hours to make a living, pay their bills, and taking care of the financial concerns. You have, 24 hours in the day, 7 days in a week, and you multiply that out. And if my math is correct, and I suspect it is because I've done the calculation before, but that gives us 168 hours. And then we take out a factor for sleep, and we'll say 8 hours a night, 7 nights a week. That's 56 hours. And I know that might be high for some and low for others. But we do spend about half of a third of our day in sleep and being kind of dead, if you will. And if you subtract that from 168 hours, we're down to about 50 or 112 hours. And then if we subtract that from all of that, that brings us down to about, or take out the factor for the production of our financial results, then we're down to about 50 or 60 hours, okay? And if we're spending about 50 or 60 hours on our financial dimension, that's about half of our waking hours just to make a living. And I don't mean that as a criticism, but simply as an observation. It's an interesting thing that I've discovered, a secret, if you will. There's very little correlation between the quantity of time that we put in on anything and what the outcome is over here. And I'm not saying no correlation. We do have to put in some time, okay? And on this issue of financial results, how much money do people make? I mean, it ranges anywhere from zero to billions of dollars. And and I'm sure some people have greater skills and gifts and good luck and other different factors, but the notion that they're billions times smarter than the average person, those who make high levels of income, I don't think so. And I think I found the answer, though. It's they just simply use their time differently. If you want to achieve more in your life in any of these 7 vital areas and reduce the time management deficit, it's not spending more time, it's just spending your time differently. Our next of the 7 vital areas is our intellectual area. And the rules were for you and I up until maybe 15, 20 years ago that we came into this world and we learned a skill, a trade, a profession, we learned how to. And that training and that education served us for a lifetime of learning. Today, if you and I continue doing what we're doing in our respective positions without any improvement, there's a risk that within a few years we could all be obsolete. And so part of building up a good productive time is allocating and investing some of our time in ongoing education and skill development. And I think I'm preaching to the choir because you folks are all here on this line here today and sharpening up the saw, if you will. And I wish we get more people that could think like we are all thinking and investing time in improving ourselves. One of the things that I find of value, not because I spend a lot of time in my car, is listening to educational CDs, and there's tons and tons of stuff out of there. I mean, commuting back and forth to work when commuting becomes fashionable again in our days. The average person's commuting an hour a day, half an hour out and half an hour back. You could almost be like a full-time student. You could learn how to speak Spanish and Italian, and you could learn about marketing and running a business and learn all kinds of different things and give yourself a bachelor's degree in self-study and become a Rhodes Scholar by utilizing that time, taking away some of the unused time to drive the car into something that's more productive. One other way of improving self-improvement is getting involved in your own professional association. no matter what your job is, your profession. There are professional associations for almost every conceivable job and profession. And if you're not familiar with which ones to belong to, you Google professional associations by title, legal secretary or college professor, high school teacher, police officer. There are all of these different associations that offer educational programs for self-improvement. Number 5 is our social dimension. And as I'm going down, and everybody appreciates good social relationships, and as I'm going down this list, oftentimes people say things, well, my social life is just fine, or my health life is where I want it to be. And, let me give a definition of productivity. And I'm in the field of personal productivity. And here's really what it comes down to. It's not everybody having the same result. Personal productivity is not everybody being a millionaire, or everybody being an author, or everyone being a family member. Personal productivity is just that. The most productive person in the world, I think, is the one who can get up in the morning and say, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being top and the best place to be, if every one of my 7 vital areas is a 10, you are the most productive person in the world. And so when we look at those areas and you find that, for example, in your social life, you feel that you're at a 10, it ain't broke, don't fix it. We don't want to make change just for the sake of change. Next is our professional dimension, and that's a little bit different than our financial dimension, although what we do for professional reasons, we do for financial reasons. The professional dimension is that inner satisfaction that we get when we conclude our workday. We know we've done a good job. We've helped solve problems, put some footprints in the sand over and above just the financial dimension. But with that, here's an interesting statistic. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, 80% of the people who go to work on Monday morning, they don't want to be there. And when I share that statistic, sometimes people are surprised the number is so low. And by Friday, payday, traditional payday, the survey finds that still 60% of the people would just as soon be somewhere out in this, the land of the richest opportunity. And I know there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, some jobs are worthy of that contempt, but my goodness, 80%. And a lot of what it comes down to is this idea of the 7 vital areas, and where the focus is just doing it for a paycheck and not viewing the value of their job from the standpoint of intellectual development and health and social and so many of these other areas. And part of my mission working with clients is to help turn that ratio around. If, for example, if we do a study with a group of employees and find out that on balance about 20% are spending about 80% of their time on A's and B's, if we can, and 80% is really kind of a deficit. Maybe with a better understanding and application of the 7 vital areas, if we can move 20% of that 80% over to the A and B column, we can literally help that organization to double their productivity, go from 20% A and B to 40% A and B. And then finally, number 7 is our spiritual dimension. And I don't advocate any particular religious philosophy or creed. And I'm not necessarily talking about religion when I mention spiritual. It could be just our relationships to one another, to our community, to our environment. Now imagine one day, and as your head hits the pillow, and I do this every night as I drift off to sleep, and I go through a mental summary of the 7 vital areas and rate my performance in that day, as we were just talking about. And imagine in this one day, every one of those was a 10 to your satisfaction. I mean, you were busy as all get out, but you still found time to go to the gym and go for a walk after work or whatever. And you had a good family time, spent some time with your daughter, helping her do homework. And you managed to have an appointment with a financial planner. You've been meaning to do that. And even though you had a lot on your plate, you still found some time to do some independent reading and maybe go out and have some pizza with some friends. It was a great professional, spiritual day. Every single one of them was a 10. You're the most productive person in the world. Well, how can I say anything other than that? Of course you were. And did you have any issues during the day? Any problems? Well, of course. But you still had a super duper day. So the idea of good productivity is not everybody having the same outcome, but everybody having a 10 by their own estimation in terms of satisfaction for each and every one of those 7 vital areas. The next step in getting a whole lot more time than in the context of these 7 vital areas is I want you to use them as a template to create your book of life. I want you to write the book of your life backwards. I'm reminded of the story of Alice in Wonderland. And if you recall the story, there was a passage there where Alice is down in the rabbit hole and she comes to a crossroads and she doesn't know to go left or right. She doesn't have a map. She hasn't been there before. And up in the tree is this big smiling Cheshire cat. So Alice turns to the cat for some direction. Do I go left? Do I go right? And the cat asks Alice a very poignant question. The cat asks Alice, what's your destination? Where do you want to go? And if you recall, Alice says, well, I don't know. And then the cat says, then take either road. What difference does it make what road you're on? If you don't know where you're going, you never know when you get there. You see, I've learned over the years, I don't think that there's any intrinsic reward in and of itself of being a salesperson or being a teacher or being a parent or being anything in life unless it's meaningful and important to you. Because again, that's what personal productivity is about. It's your standard of accomplishment, not some external standard of accomplishment. And to help us to do just that, my suggestion is you write the book of life using those 7 vital areas. You know, I think of us when the day we're born, we're all given this book, and it does have those 7 chapters already outlined in there. But the pages are blank. And every day you live your life, you're putting those pages and literally writing the book of your life as you sit here now. And the big question on how to get a whole lot more time and reduce your time deficit to accomplish more results starts with, how do you want those chapters to end? What do you want to be able to say about your health life on the last day of your life? What do you want to say about your financial life on the last day of your life, your family life on the last day of your life? And why do I focus so much on the last day of life? Because that's the only day in life you can't change the book. You know, they say that time heals all wounds, and I believe that. And whatever issues we're struggling with today, with time, we have a fairly high probability of being able to affect control over it. But on the last day of our lives, the time has been spent and the book has been written and there's no going back. And if I've learned a major lesson in all of the work that I've done over these last 30 years in this field of personal productivity, is that you and I have a lot of control over how those chapters can end. And so my homework assignment for you, if you haven't done this already, is to write the book of life. And it starts with deciding on what you want to say on the last day of your life. And I'm not talking about where you think life will take you or what you will qualify for. Or no. If the genie could come before you and wave a magic wand and you could have anything without regard to the feasibility or how do I go about doing that? No, don't worry about that right now. And I'll tell you, for most, and for me, when I was first introduced to this and started to put together my book of life, I found it was very exciting, but kind of scary. And it's not a one-shot deal. You sit down for an hour and write it all out and that's it. And it's chiseled and granite. No, it's an ongoing kind of thing, a work in progress, okay? But here's the point. Once you've got clarity on where you're taking this, and I call it me incorporated, if you will, and the big corporation that you're investing in your life, okay? Once you've got clarity on where you're going on each and every one of those 7 vital areas, now you start to work your way backward to figure out what is it that you've got to do, what I've got to do this year, this week, this month, this day, and literally this hour. Because the bragging rights to a nice story at the end of life doesn't come to us based on what we do just the last 3 days of our lives. It's what we do every single day of our lives. And once we reach that point, then the choices on how we spend our time most productively becomes a no-brainer. I mean, there's no question what I'm going to be doing after this this session here at the end of the hour. I have it right here in my diary. I know my next step. We're doing this now on Friday. Tomorrow's my next day off, first day off since last weekend. And it's 24 hours from now that Saturday starts. But I can tell you right now what I'm going to be doing first thing on Sunday morning. And on Saturday morning, when I know where I'm going. But you see, when I don't know where I'm going, I work hard. And that has been the traditional definition of productivity. And I got nothing against hard work, okay? And by the way, there's a historical basis for that. Go back about 100 years or so ago, and all throughout time, we were pretty much an agrarian culture. We worked the land, and time directed how we spent our time. We had to plant at a certain time, we had to reap and sow at a certain time, and so on. And there wasn't much in the way of choice on how we spend our time, okay? But fast forward to today, we're working harder than anybody else on the planet. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, we took that title away, I believe, from the South Koreans here not too long ago. And again, I got nothing against hard work, okay? But we don't have unlimited amounts of time. The key is working smarter rather than working harder. But again, if you don't know where you're going in the first place, it's easy to fall into the trap and say, well, I am very productive because I'm working hard, like the person that we talked about earlier who is too busy and really the less productive. It's the people who are doing the things that they want to do and the things that they have to do. You know, when I share this with my students and my clients from time to time, I sometimes hear this concern, Don, I don't have the opportunities to achieve the things in life that other people have. I didn't have the education. I didn't have the parents. I didn't have the friends. So if I only had what other people had, the opportunities that other people had, then I could maybe achieve the dreams that I have in my life. And when I'm faced with that concern, I take a moment and share the story of Professor Augustine, one that was passed down and that I heard about it. But it purports to be a true story. And briefly, Professor Augustine lived in Scotland back 400 or so years ago. And he would travel throughout Europe and lecture at colleges and institutions and come back to Scotland and give lectures on what was going on in other cultures because they didn't have National Geographic and PBS and all of that. And he's doing coming back from a tour, and he's conducting a presentation. Several hundred people are listening. They're fascinated by what he's learned. And this young lady in the back of the hall, who later finds out is a lady who's working in the castle, and she's a scullery maid, which is the lowest job on the ladder. She's the one that is on hands and knees and scrubbing and cleaning and doing all of that work. Well, anyway, when the program was over, he couldn't help but notice she was in the back and the people were leaving and she was still there. So he called her up and said, young lady, I saw you sitting there. Did you enjoy my presentation? She said, oh, yes, very much so, Professor. And I really wasn't invited to attend this because I work here. Oh, he said, don't worry. I was very flattered that you enjoyed it. And he said, what did you get most out of my presentation? And she said, it's that you had so much opportunity in your life. And she said, I only wish that I could have had the same opportunities that you had, or some of them. Well, he asked, he said, what opportunity do you have? She said, I have none. And he said, what do you do? He said, well, I work in the kitchen. I do this work all the time. I work about 12 hours a day and 6-7 days in a week and all that. He said, well, where do you spend most of your time? Well, she said, probably in the kitchen. He said, what do you do most of the time in the kitchen? Well, I'm peeling vegetables. And when you're doing that, are you sitting or standing? She says, well, I'm sitting, I guess. And he says, where are your feet? And she said, where is this going? And she says, my feet are on the floor. And the Professor Augustine says, what's the floor made of? And she says, bricks. And he asks one final question. He says, how are those bricks made? She says, I don't know. He said, I want you to figure it out. I want you to find out. You're sitting there, you have a tongue, you can ask questions, you have masons coming through, you can ask questions, and why don't you find out as much as you can about how bricks are made, and then send me a communication. Let me know what you find. Well, she goes back and she starts asking questions, and after a period of time, she finds a number of different ways of making bricks, and she prepares a paper that she writes and sends off to Professor Augustine. And it was a month or two before she heard back from Professor Augustine. And Professor Augustine sent a nice little letter and said, "Thank you very much for what you've done, and I really enjoyed what you've learned. And with your permission, caused this I've caused this to be published in a scientific uh, publication, whatever it was. And in the letter was a check or a draft, however they communicated money, in an amount equal to what you would make in a year's time to you for that article, to you, my young lady, who had no opportunity." And then the punchline to the story is at the end, he writes in, "P.S. What is under the brick?" And anyways, long story short, she often lifts up the brick. There's ants there. She starts asking about ants and everything, and she eventually winds up writing a whole book on ants. It gets distributed, and she becomes recognized as an expert in ants and is invited to travel throughout Europe and share her knowledge at colleges and institutions. This young lady who had no opportunity. So how do we assess now the productivity deficit? Okay, taking those 7 vital areas, taking into account the book of life, I want you to go through a little exercise and ask yourself 3 questions with regard to each one of those 7 vital areas. Question number 1, we'll take our health, for example. Question number 1 is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your performance on your health area? 10 means absolutely perfect. 1 is just terrible, horrible. Question number 2, if it's less than a 10, I want you to think about what is keeping you from being at a higher score. Let's say your health is at you think it's at a 7, which is not a bad number. There are no bad numbers, okay? No right or wrong answers, okay? So you're at a 7. Well, what are some of the issues that are keeping from a higher score? Well, I'm overweight. I'm tired a lot. Experience a lot of stress. Maybe those things, and you kind of think about, what are some of the issues? And I think it was Henry Ford who suggested that a problem well defined is 95% solved. And every problem has a solution, but it's key that we've got to figure out what the problem is. So first of all, the problem is I'm not at peak in my health area. That's a 7. Okay, not a bad thing, but it's room for improvement. What's keeping me from being a higher number? Okay, well, it's the stress and it's overweight and the other things. All right, so what can you change now to increase your scores? What can you do? What are your opportunities? Well, I could join the a gym. I could do that, yeah. Or if I can't afford to join a gym, I can get more exercise by scheduling a walk. I got that book on diet, that Atkins book on the Atkins diet, or maybe my friend, I know she's really good at diets. Maybe I could speak with her maybe about getting some information on diet. And you start to come up with these action steps that are within your control, and you start to build them into your to-do list, some of the things that you want to do. You'll still take care of the things you have to do. And now you've got a to-do item to speak to your friend about a diet. You can schedule your walk for tomorrow morning and make these small changes, okay? And you take that to each one of those. So you go to the next one on the scale of 1 to 10. How satisfied are you with your performance in in your family area? And upon reflection, you think about it. You say, well, something, I'm pretty satisfied with my family. I'm going to pin that really at a 9 or a 10. Oh, actually, it's pretty close to a 10. So really, there's nothing really to improve it. That's okay. That's the whole definition of personal productivity success. And then we go to the next one is the financial dimension. Let's see, on a scale of 1 to 10, my performance. It's really probably like a 3. And so what's keeping me from at a higher number? Well, I really need to make more income, and my income is just too low, okay? And by how much? Well, you mean actually kind of put down some numbers? Well, yeah. I mean, so let's say, for example, the person is making say $30,000 a year, and they're not satisfied with that. So if you could wave that magic wand, what would that number be for you to be satisfied with your financial area? And well, I'd like to make 60,000. I'd like to double my income, but I don't know how. But that's not what's important. First of all, is figure out where you want to go. All right. So that if you could increase your income by $30,000, and you feel then your financial area would be worth upwards to 10, yeah, that would be really good. And these are the questions you're really going to be asking yourself. Okay, what will change in your life when that happens? Well, yeah, Jeff, I double my income, then I'm not robbing Peter to pay Paul, and maybe get out of debt, pay down these credit cards, and maybe get that new car, maybe save up for a down payment on a house. Start talking about the benefits to you. All right, so now the big issue is, what can you change to increase your scores? And well, I get a part-time job. I could ask for a raise, and maybe I could start a little part-time business. And or maybe you just don't know. Maybe you just can't. Yeah, if I could increase my income, but I have no idea on how to increase my income, or how to improve my health. We run into these things, right, because we're limited by our own experiences. So I don't know what the solutions are. I'm coming out with a new book shortly. It's called You Got to Talk to the Muffin Man. And I'm having fun with this, but it's a simple concept. I come to work, we'll say one day, and I bring in this beautiful tray of blueberry muffins, and I'm sharing them with Susan, and I'm explaining how I make them, and how I bake them. And Tim is over here, and he's listening to, he's not part of the conversation, and he's listening to bits and pieces of my recipe. And he goes home tomorrow night, and he says, I want to make those beautiful blueberry muffins that Don made. And Don said something about flowers. So Tim goes to his backyard and he clips some dandelions. Those are flowers. And he puts them in a pan. And Don said eggs to make blueberry muffins. So he grabs the carton of eggs and he puts the whole carton in, 12 eggs in the cardboard carton. And Don said, bake it. And he puts it in this oven at 550 degrees for 12 hours. That ought to do it. And of course, it takes it out, and it's this burnt ash mess. And oh my goodness, that doesn't look a thing like those beautiful blueberry muffins. If I only had what Don had, the opportunity that he had, boy, I could make those beautiful blueberry muffins. But poor me, I don't have what it takes to get there. Tim's got everything he needs in his kitchen. It's just he doesn't have the recipe. You don't make blueberry muffins out of dandelions. You make it out of ground flour. And you don't put in 8 dozen eggs. You put in 2, and you put in, the other ingredients, and make it at 350 for 45 minutes. And if Tim could get the recipe and follow the recipe step by step, and the ingredients in the order in which it's presented, you think he's going to produce about the same result? The answer is yes. This is one of the most powerful tools that I've shared with people that I practice and learned about and take advantage of myself, as well as myself, to reduce my productivity deficit. Identify where the deficit is. Identify what's keeping me from being at a higher number. And if I can't figure out what it's going to take for me to increase it, then I go out and I find the Muffin Man, find somebody who's already accomplished what it is that I want to accomplish. Now, how do I go about doing that? And how do you go about it doing? Because you say, well, I want to increase my business, so increase my income by $30,000, but I don't know anything about, maybe I could go into a business. Okay. Yeah, that's, I suppose I could. Yeah. But what kind of a business, and how would I go about doing it? What's the first thing I'd have to do? I don't know anything about it. You need to talk to the Muffin Man. That's what SCORE is all about, with the mentor program and these programs and so forth. This place has all these muffin men and women with experiences that they're very, very anxious to share with you. Okay. Now, you're not just limited, though, to SCORE, but SCORE is a wonderful resource, particularly on these business and these financial issues. Okay. And the way forward is out there for you. in helping you to articulate your goals and all of that. Okay. But just in general, there are uh, uh, the Muffin men and women are all over the place. And I'll tell you, I've gone up to perfect strangers, and they're just two very simple questions, and you can do this. And I've never had a failure. And I know you might be saying this is crazy. Go up to a stranger and ask them questions about their recipe. Okay, uh, the my wife and I were boating, and we wanted to buy get a fiberglass boat, and a little bit bigger than what we thought we could afford, and we just had no way of knowing about how to go about doing it, and kind of wrestled with that, and how are we going to pay for this, and then where are we going to come up with a down payment? And there were too many unknowns. And my wife, who's my very good coach, and she said, Don, you really ought to follow. We all, the two of us, we wanted to go. We need to follow your advice. We need to talk to the Muffin Men and talk to somebody who's already purchased a boat. So where do you go? You go to a marina and find somebody who's already got the boat that you want. Or maybe it's the car that you want, or maybe it's the business that you want. Maybe you want to open up a pizza store. Go talk to the owner of a pizza store. Talk to somebody who's already done it. And I used two questions, and the two questions were, I went over and we got on the boat, and I kind of knocked on the door, and the owner was there in the boat. And he came out and he said, yes, can I help you? I said, yes. I said, boy, this is a nice boat. And they said, well, yeah, well, thank you. And I said, how do you do it? How do you get a boat like this? And it wasn't that abrupt, okay? I mean, it was some small talk and so on. But those are the two essential points that you do, that you use, okay? And it works 100% of the time. And I'll tell you why it works 100% of the time. Number one is the three most powerful words in the English language are, I love you. Now, I'm not suggesting you go to somebody that has accomplished what you want to accomplish and say, I love you. Maybe they'll buy you a dinner, I don't know. But when you say I love you, you don't always have to say those words. What you're doing is you're paying value to somebody. And there isn't anybody on the planet that's suffering from complimentary overload. And so when you say, hey, nice boat, nice car, wow, you've got a very good business here, you're complimenting. And the second question, the second reason why it works 100% of the time is the number one topic of conversation that everybody has in their lives is themselves. And what do they like to talk about? Their failures or their successes? Their successes. And so he said, yeah, come on board, and I'll show you around and give you the 50% tour. And he gave me all this information about what the next step should be and who to call and how to finance it and all of that. And following that advice, we one step along the way, and the next step and the next step, and eventually, within the time frame, we were able to purchase that boat. But if I'd started from, look, I can't put down that I want a boat because I don't know how to get it. No, you put it down. Don't worry about how to get it. And then if I stopped there and said, well, yeah, all right, I'll put down. I want to have a boat, okay. But since I don't know how to do it, I'm going to let it go at that point. No, you can talk to the Muffin Man out there, okay? And you do it with each every one of those 7 vital areas, and that helps to identify what the deficiencies are. It helps to define what the problem is, gets you starting to think about different ways to increase the score in different ways going forward. Another source of help on finding the way to make those changes, in addition to the Muffin Men and Women and score and those 2 questions, is to form a mastermind group. It's enormous power of getting together with other people and just doing creative problem solving. Other people who are interested in pursuing their goals, who may need some help. You can set it up on a formal basis, where you meet your mastermind group, 4 or 5 people once a month or something like that, or once a week. And you're there to help one another to overcome the hurdles that they can't manage by themselves. It's like this wall behind me is, 8 feet high or something like that. And I want to climb over this wall by myself. I'm only 5'8", and if I don't have a ladder, how can I get over? But if over here Tim is with me and he can kind of shimmy me up over the wall, And then once over, I can throw him a rope or a ladder. The two of us working together can overcome heights that neither one of us could overcome on our own. One of the really powerful techniques is setting aside just 1 hour a day of what I'm going to call me time. And let me explain what the specifics are. You know, give 23 hours to the world. But I encourage you to set aside 1 hour a day of focused attention and study. And it might be early in the evening, first thing in the morning, during your lunch hour, however you can find it. It doesn't have to be a solid hour. It could be a half an hour here, a half an hour there, of focused attention and study. Now, it's 7 hours a week, 50 weeks out of the year, because I want you to have a vacation. So that's 350 50 hours per year of me time. And the average college course is like 35 contact hours. So that's roughly 10 classes. I mean, forgetting the homework and all that. I mean, you know, Sonny, you're like a full-time student. You can give yourself a bachelor's degree in self-studies in the next 4 years just by taking, you know, an hour a day of self-study. Maybe you can do it in the car. And all these programs on CDs, you can just pop them right in there, and podcasts that you can plug into, and instead of just listening to the weather report on the radio, going back and forth, you know, 1 hour a day. You can give you know, having that Rhodes Scholar thing. It said, you know, the average person can become recognized as a world-class expert in the topic of their choice in as little as 3 to 5 years of focused attention and study. And I know it's true because I've seen it in my own life, and I've seen it in the lives of other people. Okay. And I'll give you a quick example of this. One of my clients, his name was Lenny, and he was an executive with a technical background in a career. Had been in his job for about 18 years, 19 years. And when he was in my class, I shared that statistic about how the average 80% of the people don't want to go to work on Monday morning. Lenny's hand went up in a minute. He said, I'm the one that makes that statistic possible. He says, I hate going to work on Monday morning. To which I replied, then why do you do it? I mean, if you're digging a hole, stop digging, you know? And well, he says, you know, I only have 12 more days until my retirement. It was like, you know, 12 years to his parole board. And if things aren't going really well in work, you know, you're part of that 20%. You know, you come home at night, he doesn't want to talk to anybody, and he's not communicating with his wife. And if you don't communicate, what happens to relationships? So yeah, he and his wife are like this close to getting divorced. And and talk about, you know, working for a career and appearing to be very productive, if you will. He got all the raises and the promotions and everything, but he was headed for a divorce where he was going to give up half of what he'd ever learned in his lifetime to this woman that he'd learned to hate, mostly on account of a lack of communication. And but that was brought about because he was doing a job that he didn't like in the first place. But anyways, we talked about this 1 hour a day of setting aside some time and take out TV time or whatever. He was kind of a couch potato. And he thought that was a pretty good idea. And he started to work on his communication skills. And he's an engineer by background, and sort of an introverted personality, so he doesn't feel very comfortable standing up and speaking in front of a group of people. And that's an important personal and professional skill, to be able to articulate and speak competently and confidently. And so he took the Dale Carnegie books, and he joined Toastmasters and all of that, and got into some competitions and through Toastmasters, and won some awards. And he's really getting excited and building up his confidence. And he started to do some writing. And one of the articles he wrote was no sweat presentations. I always remember that, but because of the title, yeah, just get up there, no sweat, and nothing bad's going to happen to you. Well, along comes the internet and the popularity, and he's thinking, you know, I should sell some of this information. And he sets up a website, and he's offering his services as a coach on communication skills. And he is selling some products now. He's expanded out some books and all of that sort of thing. And he's wound up within less than 3 years, he became recognized in many circles, in many HR and training circles, as one of the country's leading experts on communication skills. And he's doing some executive coaching, and he found he was making more money than what he was earning in his job, enough so that he was able to give up his job, which was taking about 50 or 60 hours a week, and he had more than doubled his income and only working 30 or 40 hours. His relationship with his wife improved. And he says, I couldn't believe how quickly things turned around in my life. Turned around on a dime when I changed my thinking. My thinking away from just working hard as a definition of productivity. When I changed my thinking about identifying where my deficits of time management are, finding the solutions, writing the book of life backwards, he said, I can't believe how it turned around on a dime. So with that, I think we have time, a little bit of time for questions. Tim, do we have some questions in the chat?
Well, thanks, Don. We'll now use the remaining time for questions and answers. We'll take as many as we can until 1 o'clock. So please submit them via the chat feature in the lower portion of your screen. As a reminder, a recording of this webinar is available within a couple of days on fairfieldcounty.score.org website. Please check our website for information on upcoming events. Now, first I want to say, I really loved your example of Henry Ford's quote, "A problem well defined is 95% solved." I hadn't heard that before. That was great. It does somewhat, though, seem to be opposed to Thomas Edison's quote, and most famous quote, "Invention is 5% perspiration and 95%, or 5% inspiration, 95% perspiration," which kind of implies that once you've identified the problem, you still got a lot of work to do.
That's so true. That's absolutely true.
I think there was one question they were looking for clarity on. In the beginning, you had mentioned A priorities, B priorities, C, D priorities, and how does that relate to the vital areas of your life? So I guess just as an example, then, if you looked at your life and let's say you find yourself reading Sports Illustrated a couple hours every week and you're not really enjoying it, and if you wanted to swap that out for, say, reading Don Wetmore's The Productivity Handbook, I mean, that's a way of increasing your time spent in the intellectual vital area of life, I guess. Is that kind of how you would apply that?
Yeah, I think that's a good example. It's another tool that you can use to help bring this into focus is to run a time log, and nothing fancy about it. Just get a pad of paper and kind of keep a track of how you're spending your time over maybe a 2 or 3 day period. So I made a series of phone calls for a half an hour, and I'll just make an entry on the sheet, 30 minutes of doing telephone calls, and then I make a judgment. Was that A time, B time, C time, or D time? It's a very subjective thing, okay? And just kind of keep a track of where I'm spending my time, and to the extent that you're spending A and B time, that's good. That's by and large productive time. But you're going to find where the C and D time is coming in, and pick out those things, those repetitive C and D things, and transfer them over to different activity that's of higher priority, A and B time. And by the way, to that first quote that you mentioned, okay, 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. When I announced to my colleagues, my friends, and so forth, some years ago when I decided I wanted to go into coaching, and I've been doing this now for 30 years. And my best friend at the time said, "You're going to do what?" And you've never done this before, because we have folks like that. And as time went by, I did put in the work. It was a lot of work, of course it is. And I saw him about 10 years later, and he said, "Well, how are you doing?" And I said, I'm doing sexually. He said, "Well, wow, you are just so lucky. You just got into that thing at the right time." And I said, "You were an overnight success." I said, "No, I was a 10-year success. It took me 10 years to do it." That's right.
Well, thanks, Don. Next question from Rick is, what was the most productive change you've made in your life?
The most productive change, let's see. I'm going to say when I stopped comparing myself to other people. I thought I had to have the same level of success that my peers had in all different areas, in health and family and all those different areas. And I was kind of chasing that, the staying up with the Joneses, if you will, that kind of a thing, until I realized and came to the understanding that it's an individual thing. And that's why I emphasize personal productivity. It's just that we get to define our own productivity. Now, I can't say that anyone is not productive because you don't have a certain level of income or a degree or you didn't write a book or something like that. That's how one would define productivity for them, but everybody gets to do that. So I think that was probably the biggest shift that I had early on in my career.
Great, great. RH, let's see, he says, and what if you're, how do you contact a person to mentor you that you don't know and is an expert in the field? I think, RH, you must be referring to SCORE mentoring. And you just have to go to the website, and there's a box there that says find a mentor. And you put in as much information as you want to share about the field you're in. I know you also have a related question on what if it's a very unique thing. Put in as much information as you can. If it's a legal area, it'll be referred to a legal person. And actually what it comes down to more than anything else is having a decent business plan, a complete business plan, no matter what the product or services you may think is very unique. It's all about the plan, and your SCORE mentor can help you develop that plan. Next one is from Tammy. This was very enlightening webinar, very thought-provoking. Okay. How do you approach a mentor in your field? Example, a nutritionist. Once again, if you go for a SCORE mentor, put in as much information as you can. And we very often have subject matter experts that we can refer to, people that have started a restaurant, for instance. If you wanted to talk to someone who actually is in the business and get firsthand knowledge, we can usually arrange that as well. The other thing I wanted to say is I really appreciated the change your thinking type approach. That was very useful. In other words, I think there's a lot of people that their idea of relaxation would be staying home on the couch. They have a spouse and she wants to go out with a couple neighbors to a theater. That's not your idea of fun, but it probably very well relates to a number 2 vital area of life, or number 5, the social dimension and the family, and it's worth investing your time and getting off the couch. So it's kind of a little example of, changing your thinking will help you put the effort where it is. I think that's the end of our questions. So Don, I just want to thank you very much. On behalf of SCORE, I'd like to thank you for today. It's been great. Again,
Tim,
yep.
I just want to make mention too, in terms of any help and assistance, on the screen is my contact information.
Right.
Wherever I can be of help in your path, please give me a call. I'm more than happy to help folks who are in that transition on the path to more productivity.
Right. Thanks, Don. And if you missed anything on that last screen, this presentation will be available on our website within a couple days and you can rewatch it. Okay, so thanks a lot. And on behalf of SCORE, thanks for tuning in today. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you all.